What happens when royalty walks into a morning show thinking the rules don't apply to them? In just 32 seconds, one comment would turn a simple interview into the most shocking meltdown in Good Morning America history. Before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we're pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side. We're exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. And stick around until the end to comment on your thoughts about this outrageous behavior. The studio lights were bright that morning. George Stephanopoulos sat in his chair, ready to start another day of interviews. He had no idea what was about to happen. Across from him sat Meghan Markle, dressed perfectly, looking calm and collected. But that calm wouldn't last long. George started with a smile. "Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're really excited to have you here." Meghan nodded, but didn't smile back. "Well, I'm here." That was the first sign. George, being the professional he is, kept going. "I want to talk about your recent projects and everything you've been working on. Can you tell our viewers what you've been up to?" Meghan shifted in her seat. "I've been busy, very busy, busier than most people could ever imagine." George tried to keep things light. "I'm sure you have been. Now, you've been involved in several charitable causes. Can you tell us about those?" "Charitable causes?" Meghan's voice got sharper. "Is that all people want to talk about? My charity work? What about the real issues?" George looked a little surprised but stayed calm. "Well, we can talk about whatever you'd like. What real issues would you like to discuss? How about the way I've been treated? How about the fact that nobody in this country understands what I've been through?" Meghan leaned forward, her voice getting louder. The crew behind the camera started looking at each other. This wasn't normal. George kept his cool. "I think a lot of people are very sympathetic to what you've experienced. That's actually something our viewers would love to hear more about." "Sympathetic?" Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. "They're not sympathetic. They're judgmental. Everyone judges me. Everyone thinks they know my story." George nodded slowly. "Well, that's why we're here today. To let you tell your story in your own words." "In my own words?" Meghan's eyes narrowed. "But you're going to twist them, aren't you? That's what you people do. You twist everything." You could feel the tension in the room. George's smile faded a little. "I can assure you, we're not here to twist anything. We want to have an honest conversation." Meghan waved her hand dismissively. "Honest conversation? Right. Like the honest conversations I've had with every other journalist who then went and wrote lies about me." "I understand you've had difficult experiences with the press," George said carefully. "But we're live right now. Everything you say goes directly to our audience. No editing, no twisting. Live." Meghan repeated the word like it tasted bad. "So millions of people are watching me right now." "Yes, that's correct." "Good. Then maybe they'll finally hear the truth." Meghan sat up straighter. "The truth is that I've been treated abhorrently." "Do you know what that word means, George?" "Abhorrently?" George kept his voice even. "I do know what it means, and I'm sorry you felt that way. Can you give us some specific examples?" "Specific examples?" Meghan's voice rose again. "How about every single day? How about the fact that I can't go anywhere without being photographed? How about the fact that people make up stories about me constantly?" "Those are challenges that many public figures face," George said gently. "What makes your situation unique?" That was apparently the wrong thing to say. Meghan's face changed completely. "What makes it unique? What makes it unique? Are you seriously asking me that?" The other hosts at the table looked uncomfortable. Robin Roberts glanced at Michael Strahan. The producers in the control room were probably panicking. George tried to calm things down. "I just meant that I'd like to understand your perspective better." "My perspective," Meghan said coldly, "is that people like you sit in your comfortable chairs and ask people like me insulting questions and then act like you're doing us a favor." "I'm not trying to insult you," George said firmly but politely. "I'm trying to have a conversation. A conversation requires two people treating each other with respect, George. Do you respect me?" "Of course I respect you." "Then why are you asking me these ridiculous questions?" Meghan snapped. "Why aren't you asking me about my intelligence, my accomplishments? Why does it always have to be about my feelings and my problems?" George took a breath. "We can absolutely talk about your accomplishments. I'd love to hear about your work." "Oh, now you'd love to hear about it? After you've already made me look bad on national television?" "I don't think anyone has made you look bad," George said, his patience clearly being tested. "I think we're just having a discussion that's become a bit heated." "A bit heated?" Meghan stood up slightly in her chair. "You have no idea what heated is. You sit here every morning with your scripts and your teleprompters and you think you're so important. You think you can just ask people whatever you want. The camera operators didn't know where to look. Should they keep filming? Should they cut away? This was live television. There was nowhere to hide. George's voice got firmer. I think we should take a breath here. Maybe we can start over. Start over? Meghan laughed that cold laugh again. Why would I want to start over with someone who clearly doesn't respect me or my time? I've been nothing but respectful to you, George said, and you could hear the frustration creeping into his voice now. I invited you here. I prepared thoughtful questions. I've listened to everything you've said. Thoughtful questions? Meghan's voice dripped with sarcasm. Asking me about charity work is thoughtful? Asking me about my feelings is thoughtful? Those are the laziest questions imaginable. Then what would you like me to ask you? George spread his hands. I'm genuinely asking, what questions would make you happy? It's not about making me happy, George. It's about treating me like an intelligent human being instead of some celebrity gossip topic. I am treating you like an intelligent human being, George said, his voice rising slightly for the first time. But you came on this show. You agreed to this interview. If you didn't want to be here, you could have said no. That did it. Meghan's face turned red. How dare you? How dare you speak to me that way? I'm speaking to you the same way I'd speak to anyone, George said, not backing down anymore. With honesty. Honesty? Meghan practically shouted. You don't know the meaning of the word. None of you do. You're all the same. All you media people, you're vultures. Robin Roberts tried to jump in. Maybe we should all just take a moment to. Stay out of this, Robin, Meghan snapped, not even looking at her. This is between me and your colleague here, who thinks he can talk to me however he wants. George shook his head. I have been professional this entire time. I've remained calm even as you've become increasingly hostile. Hostile? Meghan's eyes went wide. You think I'm being hostile? After everything I've been through? After all the attacks and the lies and the absolute torture of being in the public eye? Many people deal with public scrutiny, George said. It's part of being a public figure. Don't you dare compare me to other people, Meghan said, her finger pointing at George now. You have no idea what my life is like. No idea what I deal with every single day. You're right, I don't, George said. That's why I was trying to ask you about it. That's why you're here. I'm here because I thought maybe, just maybe, someone in the media would treat me fairly. But I was wrong. I'm always wrong about you people. The tension was suffocating. The crew members were frozen. This was spiraling completely out of control. George tried one more time. I think we've gotten off track here. Why don't we take a commercial break and... A commercial break? Meghan interrupted. So you can tell me what to say? So you can coach me on how to behave? I don't think so. That's not what a commercial break is for, George said tiredly. It's to give everyone a moment to reset. I don't need to reset, Meghan said. I'm perfectly clear about what's happening here. You invited me on your show to embarrass me. That's absolutely not true, George said, his voice firm. We invited you here to give you a platform. A platform? Meghan scoffed. This isn't a platform. This is an ambush. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. Nobody's ambushing you, George said, and now he sounded genuinely frustrated. You're ambushing yourself with this behavior. Meghan gasped like she'd been slapped. My behavior? My behavior? How about your behavior, George? How about the way you've been condescending to me since I sat down? I have not been condescending, George said firmly. I have asked you normal interview questions. You're the one who has responded with hostility from the very beginning. Because I knew what this was, Meghan said, standing up now. I knew this was a setup. I knew you'd try to make me look bad. Please sit down, George said. We're live on television. I know we're live on television, Meghan said, still standing. That's the only reason I'm still here. So everyone can see how the media treats people like me. People like you? George asked. What does that mean? It means people who don't fit into your neat little boxes, Meghan said. People who speak their minds. People who refuse to be pushed around by people like you. George stood up too now. I am not pushing you around. I am trying to conduct an interview. An interview that you agreed to do. Well, consider this interview over, Meghan said, reaching for her microphone. Wait, George said, his hand up. Let's not end things like this. Let's have a civil conversation. Civil? Meghan yanked off her microphone. There's nothing civil about this. There's nothing civil about the way you've treated me. This whole thing has been disrespectful from the start. I disagree completely, George said, his voice steady but firm. I have been respectful. I have been patient. I have tried to give you every opportunity to share your perspective. Your version of respect is insulting, Meghan said. Your version of patience is condescending. And your version of opportunity is a trap. One of the producers finally spoke into George's earpiece, but it was too late to salvage this. The whole world was watching this disaster unfold. I'm sorry you feel that way, George said, and he actually sounded sorry. But I think if you watch this back, you'll see that I've been nothing but professional. Professional, Meghan repeated mockingly. Is that what you call this? Because I call it an attack. I call it exactly the kind of journalism that's destroying this country. Now hold on, George said, his patience finally wearing completely thin. You can criticize me all you want, but don't criticize journalism as a whole. We have an important job to do. Important? Meghan laughed. You think asking me about charity work is important? You think this gotcha nonsense is important? There were no gotcha questions, George said, his voice rising. Every question I asked was straightforward and fair. Fair to who? Meghan demanded. Fair to you and your agenda? Because it certainly wasn't fair to me. What agenda? George threw his hands up. What possible agenda could I have? I'm trying to do my job. Your job is to make people like me look bad so people like you can feel superior, Meghan said venomously. That crossed a line. George's face hardened. That is completely unfair and completely untrue. I have interviewed thousands of people with respect and integrity. Well, you failed today, Meghan said. You failed spectacularly. The only failure here, George said, his voice cold now, is this conversation. And that failure is not on me. Meghan grabbed her purse. Of course you'd say that. Of course you'd blame me. That's what you people always do. You people? George repeated. What does that mean? The media, Meghan said. The establishment. Everyone who thinks they're better than everyone else. I don't think I'm better than anyone, George said. But I also don't think I deserve to be spoken to this way on my own show. Your show? Meghan's voice went up an octave. This isn't your show, George. This show belongs to the network. You're just an employee like everyone else. The other hosts looked absolutely mortified. Michael Strahan had his head in his hands. Robin Roberts was staring at the desk. George took a deep breath. I think we need to end this interview now. Oh, now you want to end it? Meghan said. After you've gotten what you wanted? After you've made me lose my temper on national television? Nobody made you do anything, George said quietly. You made your own choices here today. My choices? Meghan's voice shook with anger. My only choice was to defend myself against your attacks. There were no attacks, George said, enunciating each word carefully. There was only an interview that you chose to turn into a confrontation. I turned it into a confrontation? Meghan looked around like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Is anyone else hearing this? He's actually blaming me. I'm not blaming anyone, George said. I'm stating facts. Your facts are lies, Meghan said. Everything you've said today has been a lie. George shook his head slowly. I think you need to leave now. Excuse me? Meghan's mouth dropped open. I'm asking you to leave the set, George said calmly. This interview is over. You can't kick me off, Meghan said. You can't just kick a guest off your show. I can when that guest becomes verbally abusive, George said. And you've crossed that line. Verbally abusive? Meghan looked genuinely shocked. I'm the one being abused here. By you. By this whole setup. Security, George said, looking off camera. Can we please escort our guest out? Meghan's eyes went wide. Security? You're calling security on me? You're being disruptive, George said. And I'm ending this segment. Disruptive? Meghan's voice cracked. I'm being honest. That's what's disruptive to you. Honesty. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set. Meghan looked at them, then back at George. This is unbelievable, she said. This is absolutely unbelievable. You invite me here, you attack me with your questions, and then you have me removed when I defend myself? That's not what happened, George said tiredly. But you're welcome to tell yourself whatever story you need to. Story? Meghan's laugh was almost hysterical now. This isn't a story, George. This is my life. This is what I deal with every single day. People like you making my life miserable. I'm sorry you're miserable, George said, and he actually sounded genuine. But that's not my fault. And it's not the fault of this interview. Everything is someone else's fault with you people, Meghan said, gathering her things. You never take responsibility for anything. I take responsibility for my actions, George said. Can you say the same? Meghan stared at him. How dare you? It's a simple question, George said. Nothing about this has been simple, Meghan said. Nothing about dealing with you has been simple. The security guards stepped closer. One of them said quietly, "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Meghan whirled on him. "Don't touch me. Nobody's touching you," the guard said calmly. "We're just asking you to leave." "I'll leave when I'm ready to leave," Meghan said. "Not when some security guard tells me to," George spoke up. "Meghan, please. Let's not make this worse than it already is." "Worse?" Meghan turned back to him. "How could this possibly be worse? You've already humiliated me on national television." "You humiliated yourself," George said, his patience completely gone now. "I gave you every opportunity to have a good conversation. You chose to turn it into this." "I chose nothing," Meghan said. "You backed me into a corner with your terrible questions and your condescending attitude." "My questions were standard," George said. "My attitude was professional. Your reactions were completely out of line." "Out of line?" Meghan's voice rose to a near shout. "I'll show you out of line." She grabbed the water glass from the table. For a second, everyone thought she might throw it, but instead, she just slammed it down, splashing water everywhere. "That's enough," George said firmly. "Security, please remove her now." The guards moved in, one on each side of Meghan. They didn't touch her, but their presence was clear. "Get away from me," Meghan said, backing up. "All of you, get away from me." "Ma'am, please come with us," one guard said. "I'm going," Meghan said. "I'm going, but not because you're making me, because I choose to, because I refuse to spend another second with these people." She started walking toward the exit, the guards following her. But she turned back one more time. "You're going to regret this, George," she said. "You're going to regret treating me this way." George just shook his head. "The only thing I regret is agreeing to this interview." "Of course you do," Meghan said bitterly, "because it didn't go the way you wanted, because you couldn't control me." "I never tried to control you," George said. "I just tried to talk to you." "Well, you failed," Meghan said. "You failed at basic human decency." And with that, she turned and walked off the set, the security guards close behind her. You could hear her voice echoing as she left. "This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I've never been treated so poorly in my entire life." George stood there for a moment, just breathing. The studio was completely silent. Nobody knew what to say. Finally, George turned to the camera. "We're going to take a commercial break," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "When we come back, we'll continue with the rest of our show." Robin Roberts reached over and touched his arm. "Are you okay?" George nodded. "I'm fine. In 30 years of doing this, I've never had an interview go like that." "She was completely out of control," Michael Strahan said quietly. "I tried," George said, more to himself than anyone else. "I really tried to give her a fair interview." "Everyone saw that," Robin said. "Everyone watching saw that you were nothing but professional." The cameras cut to commercial. George sat back down in his chair, running his hand through his hair. The makeup person rushed over to check if he needed anything. "I'm okay," he said. "Just give me a minute." The producers were already in damage control mode. Phones were ringing off the hook. Social media was exploding. This was going to be everywhere within minutes. When they came back from commercial, George addressed what had happened head on. "Well," he said with a slight smile, "that was unexpected. We invited our guest here today for what we hoped would be a thoughtful conversation. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. But that's live television sometimes. Things don't always go as planned." He didn't throw Meghan under the bus. He didn't make excuses. He just acknowledged what everyone had seen and moved on. That's the mark of a true professional. Robin jumped in to help. "We have a great show still ahead. Coming up next, we have." And just like that, they moved forward. But nobody who watched that morning would ever forget what they'd seen. The entitled outburst, the complete meltdown, the way Meghan had turned a simple interview into a full-blown disaster. George had remained calm almost the entire time. He'd tried to de-escalate. He'd tried to be fair. He'd tried to give Meghan every opportunity to have a good conversation. But she'd chosen confrontation over conversation. She'd chosen anger over answers. And in the end, she'd chosen to walk away rather than take any responsibility for her own behavior. The other guests that day were extra nice to George. They could see he was shaken, even though he hid it well. By the end of the show, he'd recovered his composure completely, but the incident had rattled him. You could tell. During the final segment, Michael Strahan made a joke. "George, after this morning, the rest of our guests better be on their best behavior." George laughed, and it seemed genuine. "You know what? I'm just glad we got through it. That's all you can do sometimes. Just Get through it and move on. You handled it incredibly well, Robin said seriously. A lot of hosts would have lost their cool. I came close, George admitted. But what good would that have done? She was already upset enough for both of us. When the show finally ended and the cameras turned off, George let out a long breath. The crew gave him a small round of applause. He smiled and waved it off. Thanks, everyone. Let's just call that a learning experience and move on. But as he walked back to his dressing room, you could see the weight of it on his shoulders. He'd been in this business for decades. He'd interviewed presidents and world leaders and celebrities of all kinds. But he'd never had someone completely fall apart on him like that. Never had someone turn on him so viciously for no apparent reason. His producer caught up with him. George, are you sure you're okay? He nodded. Yeah, it was rough, but I'll be fine. Is she gone? Security escorted her out of the building. She was still ranting about how unfair the interview was. George shook his head. I truly don't understand what happened there. I asked her basic questions, normal interview questions, and she just exploded. Some people can't handle being questioned, the producer said. Even gently. I guess not, George said. I just hope our viewers understand that I wasn't trying to attack her or make her uncomfortable. They do, the producer assured him. Social media is overwhelmingly on your side. People can see you are being professional. That seemed to relieve George a little. Good. That's good. I'd hate for people to think I was bullying her or something. Not at all, the producer said. If anything, people are shocked by how patient you were with her. George managed a small smile. Well, that's something at least. As he changed out of his suit and got ready to leave for the day, he couldn't stop replaying the interview in his mind. Where had it gone wrong? What could he have done differently? Should he have ended it sooner? Should he have pushed back harder? Should he have been even more gentle? But the truth was, there probably wasn't anything he could have done differently. Some people come into an interview looking for a fight. And when someone's determined to be offended, determined to play the victim, determined to turn everything into an attack, there's no amount of professionalism or kindness that will change that. George had learned that lesson before, but never quite so dramatically. Never quite so publicly. That interview would be talked about for days, weeks, months. It would be analyzed and dissected and debated. People would take sides. Some would defend Meghan, saying George must have done something off camera to upset her. But most people who actually watched the interview would see the truth. They'd see a professional journalist trying his best to have a conversation with someone who had no interest in conversing. They'd see patience meeting hostility. They'd see respect meeting entitlement. And they'd see, in the end, that sometimes you can do everything right and still have everything go wrong. That's just part of being in the public eye, part of doing live television, part of dealing with people who believe their own hype so completely that they can't accept even the gentlest form of accountability. George would move on from this. He'd do more interviews. He'd have better days, but he'd never forget the morning when a simple interview turned into one of the most dramatic moments in Good Morning America history. All because someone couldn't handle being treated like everyone else.